looking at this book, Techno, Feudalism, What Killed Capitalism. The author is Yanis Varoufakis. Remember, Yanis was the finance minister of Greece during the last financial crisis, and went through all the storm. He had to leave, government amidst the crisis. And since then, of course, he's a professor of economics. It's also important to state up front that he's a Marxist economist, a very convinced one at that. So you'll then, just to prepare your mind for those who have not read the book, that the kind of thing you are going to encounter. Now, what Adaudo and Benson will do for us this evening is to at least give a foretaste, of what readers will encounter, if you read the book. And by way of introduction of the book, like I said, Yanis is an economist, an internationally renowned one, and a big voice, in the global left, generally, the Marxist economist, and that is quite clear. Is that the book is not the typical economics book, so that you're not going to encounter, when you get to read it, many graphs, many equations, all those redundant economic arguments and jargon. It's just like storytelling. It's richer. You are going to encounter more of metaphors, imageries, poetic overtones, more than graphs and equations and tables and pie charts and all the rest that you normally associate with economic text. So it's a very interesting read. And of course, expectedly, you expect that it will provoke different reactions. Liberal intellectuals, perhaps will not find this a palatable one. Those of us in the left, see a lot of vindication, of what we've been saying about capitalism in what is seen, and to go on. That is just on a general note. Also, what is also interesting in the book, like, is storytelling. That the book, according to Yanis, is an attempt to answer a question that his father posed to him way back in 1987. In 1993, actually, that is 32 years ago, And that question, he had wrestled with it for so long, that to get an answer, and given the experience of the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, which actually, shook capitalism to its foundation, that even many convinced liberal economists actually believe that something must be wrong, fundamentally with the system, that since the Great Depression of the 30s, capitalism had never encountered the kind of thing, I'm talking of when you had the collapse of Lehman Brothers and the big banks failed as a result of the exuberance of financialism, beginning in America, that all those assumptions of infeasibility of capitalism, were proved, So he, as a radical economist, has been wrestling with this, and that finally, his reflections in this book is an attempt, to answer that question, which is further posed to him. Because according to him, the thing about capitalism, he was quoting the Marxist literary critic, the American Marxist literary critic, and a theorist of postmodernism, that is Frederick Jameson. But Jameson once famously said that for many liberals, it is even more, it is possible to imagine the end of the world than to imagine the end of capitalism. That for those who think that capitalism is the ultimate, is the natural order of things, and that is nothing, nothing could go wrong with it. That, so some people, you can convince some people that the world will come to an end more easily than you can convince them that there can actually be end to capitalism. Hence, the very shocking title he has given, that what killed capitalism. I imagine that both Adaudo and Benson must have encountered some interesting passages which they may want to read, you know, in the course of the discussion. So, if you permit, let me begin with my own passage to read and to, you know, to pose the first question, and that is on page. Is that? You don't have? No, it's the same. It's the same. Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. It's actually the first chapter. Essay's Lament. Yeah. It's toward the end of that particular chapter. I think it's almost the last paragraph. Now, I'm sorry. Okay. Now, if you go towards the end of that chapter, you encounter this paragraph. The first chapter, that is Essay's Lament. Essay's Lament, towards the end. Says, in 1987, his father, he was talking about his father. I told you that this book is an attempt to answer a question that the father posed to him. So that, and I want us to start on that note. So in 1987, his father sought his help to set up his first desktop computer. A glorified typewriter, he called it, but with an impressive on-screen editing facility. Quote, imagine how many more volumes of Marx's complete works will consist of if the bearded one, that is Marx, had owned one of these. He joked that Marx would have, I mean, the writing that's capital, the 3 volumes, would have been easier if there was computer in the days of Marx in the 19th century. And as if to prove the point, he used it over the years, then followed to churn out voluminous papers and books on the interplay between the ancient Greece technology and literature. 6 years on, in 1993, I arrived at Falerio, home with a chunky early modem to connect his computer to the fledgling internet. That is the first time he connected his father to internet. That was way back in 1993. And the father responded, "This is a game changer." Struggling to dial up a woefully slow Greek internet provider, he asked me the killer question. So I'm saying that question is very central to the reading of this book. That is father asked him the killer question that ultimately inspired the writing of this book. And what was the question? I quote, "Now that computers speak to each other, will this network make capitalism impossible to overthrow? Or might it finally reveal its Achilles heel?" Unquote. Caught up in my own projects and dramas, I never got around to answering father's question. When I finally decided I had an answer for him, Dad was already 95 years old and finding it hard to follow my musings. And so, here I am. A few years later, only a few weeks after his passing, composing my answer, belatedly, but I hope not in vain. So this book actually is an attempt by his son to answer the question that the father posed way back in 1993. Now, the final thing I will say before posing the first question to our distinguished panelists is that the reading of the book, you know that you should just have in mind that Yanis is discussing the political economy of what we call the new technology. That is it, you know, and that is very important, because here in the South, you know, in the new colony, as I put it, we are busy about, you know, trying to bridge the digital divide, how we are going to acquire the technology, how we are going to consume the latest technology. We are not part of the discussion of the political economy of the new technology, you know, and that is what he's trying to say, that already a system, I like the theme of the festival that you are talking, imagining alternatives. It's saying that already an alternative is coming that will replace capitalism, and that it will be worse than capitalism itself. That is that those who have problems with capitalism about what is wrong with it, that what is, you know, Then the other thing too, in this book, you also see a continuation of what a lot of writers, you know, have been talking about. That is the retreat of neoliberalism, you know, as a result of the excesses. That part of the consequences, you know, is that you are going to have, you know, the crisis of capitalism, you know, being deepened. So on that note, my first question would be, first to Adaudo. Do you also subscribe to the view that capitalism can come to an end? Sorry.
Hello? Okay, it works. Every system that is created can always be unmade and remade. That's just the fact of life, or the fact of history. Like, we keep talking about even the American Empire, but we know the American Empire would end, like the Roman Empire ended, like the Ming Dynasty ended in China. So it's not a question of, I think it's more a question of how will it end, or how will things end? And this is really Yanis talking about, we've seen the end of capitalism. So some people may disagree with him. Some people feel like it's an aggressive form of capitalism. And just to put it as a context, in his appendix, that might be my passage to read, he does say, this is my take on something. Economists, which is a fault of theirs, I always say, they feel so certain about their theories, when their theories are often based on ideology. So they start with ideology and use facts and data, as you mentioned, data and graphs to talk about their work. But in essence, most of the time, economists start from ideologies and then use facts to support it. So he does start, as you said, he's a Marxist, contradictory. He says, I'm a libertarian capitalist, which is kind of like a contradictory way of saying he's a Marxist. But this is his take on the end of a system, the new start of an era, which people may disagree with him or not. And he even does admit that, especially in the appendix of his book, that there are a few people that say this is a form of capitalism, we are not past capitalism. But it depends on what your definition of even capitalism is. So for context, even though he uses metaphor a lot, you do need to have a certain idea of what political economy is to really get to the essence of the book. So sometimes it might not be an easy read for just an ordinary reader if the reader is already not well versed in ideas of feudalism and why feudalism is about rent. So maybe I may explain. So he's talking about, as you mentioned, is the Western world. Africa doesn't feature in the core, which a lot of capitalists talk about, the global system. There is often the core and the peripheral countries. So Africa is often situated in the periphery that serves the core with raw materials, and then the use of manufactured goods. So that's why you say we're not even featured in it. So this is really about the core dominating powers of the world. And in the core dominating powers of the world, of Europe, and Asia, I would add Asia to that those core countries, especially in the long durée of history. So you have a situation where they move from feudalism, which is they're getting the dominant society, the dominant class, were getting their wealth from rent, from people who are serfs, who work the land, give them profit, and they're able to make use of that profit. But capitalism overthrew that system, where we are now having the market and profit dominate through capital goods. So capital goods are machinery, things, commodities that produce other commodities for people to then get profit. So that's what capitalism is. So those, and then it often he uses it as coinciding with the Industrial Revolution. I somehow disagree with that, because I do consider even slave trading as part of capitalism, as being at the start of the capitalist system. But more often than not, people consider the Industrial Revolution, where people are able to have the machinery, the capital goods, and then people people then act labor, then gives their value to help produce the capital goods. So that's even where his Marxism comes in. So the capitalists do say, my profit is coming from the value I'm bringing with the capital goods, with the entrepreneurship, etc. But with Marxism are saying, no, you are actually shortchanging labor, who are giving you more value than you're even paying them. So that's also the contention of capitalism versus labor, etc. So what he's now saying is, with these techno-feudalists, we're kind of back to the feudal class of land, but then the land is the Facebook, the Amazon, etc., where we are no longer, and these are their fiefdoms, so these are the lords of the land. So he's now saying they are now collecting rent from the capitalists themselves. So if I'm Adaudo and I'm selling kids' toys, I want to sell it on Amazon, and Amazon is going to take rent. At the same time, Adaudo is using Alexa, Adaudo is using all these tools for navigation, and they're collecting data to even make it, that's data. I'm even working for Amazon, I'm working for Apple without even knowing it. So they're even collecting money from me. So it's now, he says, the capitalist power is not just about, they're adding an extra layer to capitalism, where they're even extracting from labor without even us knowing it, or us even freely giving it. So it's really a completely new system, where even the capitalist class is within that system. It really depends on what you think capitalism is, and if it's the same. I'll leave it to you.
Thank you so much, Adaudo, for very deep insights into the book, and I'm actually strikingly setting the tone, in the discussion, because, like you said, here is saying that techno-feudalism is going to replace capitalism. The distinction, like you're saying, is that under capitalism, the argument of the left is that the capitalists exploit workers. That is, is the contradiction between labor and capital. That what capitalists feed on is the exploitation from workers. But Yanni's argument is that what we are going to have, that the shift that we are going to have, is even going to be worse than capitalism, in the sense that it's going to be the relationship between a feudal lord and a serf. And that the condition of a worker is even superior, is better qualitatively than that of a serf, because a worker at least is entitled to a wage. Whether the wage is enough, whether it's enough to take him home, or it's a different matter. But the serf is just working on the land, for the feudal lord, and is not entitled to any more. The exploitation of feudalism is more vicious, more rapacious than the exploitation of capitalism. So that is what he's talking about. That now, like she said, when you are lost on the internet, going from Amazon to Google, from Google to Facebook and the rest, that you are actually, that is your attention, you are investing your attention for people, the techno giants, like she has mentioned, making money, the huge profit they are making, is derived from your investment of your attention, to which you are not even entitled to any, no wage, no sharing or profit, nothing, but that the basis of their wealth, is that you have, devoted your attention. I mean, they're able to capture your attention and make money out of it, which is a more vicious, form of capitalism. And saying that possibly is the system that will replace capitalism. Now, Benson, how do you see the projection of techno-feudalism replacing capitalism? What is your assessment of the possibility in historical terms?
Sorry, capitalism is invading us. Well, thanks for having me on this panel. At some point in the book, Yanis talks about the importance of naming, because for him, he knows that his argument is going to be a very hard sell, right? To tell people that there's a new global system that's emerging, right? And that system is not what we are used to, right? Because we all think that we live in a capitalist world, right? And he's making his argument that there's a new system, and then he gives that system a name. Of course, the name itself, Techno-Feudalism, wasn't coined by him, because before him, others have used that term to describe the hegemony that is emerging from some big companies, right, dominating cyberspace, So he talks about, at some point in the book, he talks about why names are very important. Because if you name something, somehow you have some kind of control over it, you have some kind of knowledge of it, some kind of understanding of it, So what he describes in that book, and what he calls techno-feudalism, others have called other things too. So for instance, in a book like this, right, Netocracy, these authors describe the same phenomenon, right, but from a very positive angle. And they call that same thing that is called techno-feudalism, they call it netocracy. And of course, when we say cracy, we know what cracy means, some rule by, and it says that the people who rule the emerging world are the netocrats, people who become internet savvy, who get their products, their sales, their attitudes and everything digitized. And then we know that in our society today, because we live, if you read the work, you would find Africa mentioned maybe like 11 times, and then marginally, almost like in footnotes and the rest, And every time Africa is mentioned after some kind of and. Say Asia, this and Africa. So Africa is like some kind of appendage to the global system, right? So in a sense, what Yanis doesn't bring to the fore is the fact that we live in Africa, we live in the digital margins, right? Of course, the story out there is that it's a global village, right? It's not. It's not global village at all, right? They see plenty of marginalization going on. They see that divide, and we live in the margins, And then within that margins, there are also margins. So there are people who live in the margins of the margins, Because all that happens on Twitter, Nigerian Twitter, is not Nigerian society. Those who are on Twitter, Nigerians on Twitter, when people talk about Nigeria, they look at what people do, in that space, right? But then we know that the Nigerian reality is beyond Twitter, But of course, we know that if in this society and in the global society today, if you are not digitized, you feel some kind of existential angst, almost like you're not there in the world. So everything has to be digitized, plus education and the rest, right? And then when you meet somebody who is not online, you have pity for that person, because you think that they're not living there, The Yanis, for instance, what's arguing here is that perhaps those who are not online, right, are better off than those of us who are online. So it's going to make this book a very, very hard sell. Because in a sense, what it calls techno-feudalism has become hegemonic. The same way, at some point in history, when the slave trade became hegemonic, such that some people who were slaves and became free, got their freedom, also became enslavers. You know? So today we'll find people, you know, you find serfs and co who will not mind, in the past, right? Serfs and co will not mind a system where, who will not mind the system, in the sense that they wouldn't mind when, say, a war occurs, and then they're able to, like, you know, fight that war and then become some kind of knights, and then they grow up in the ranks, and then whatever it is, and then you see there are stories of people born into serfdom who that became part of, nobles. That's, of course it's rare, but that keeps, because when it becomes hegemonic, the serfs themselves agree, right, to the conditions of their own serfdom, right? So capitalism itself has become hegemonic, right? And then what is emerging, whatever Yanis calls it, that what they call Techno Feudalism, has become hegemonic such that nobody here will want to lose their Twitter handle. Well, we post stuff online, right? And then we don't get likes and the rest. We feel sad, you know? And then if you're on Twitter today and you don't have the blue tick, right? You feel that you're not there, you know? And of course, you made to know you're not there. Because the algorithm is not democratic, right? Without blue tick, for instance, your tweet, whatever the content is, right? Without blue tick, it gets promoted by the algorithm, you know? So the mechanism itself is to make you feel that sense of not being there, you know, of not being there in the world, of being lost, of losing out on things, right? So it is there. The truth really is that there's something emerging. And the richest man today is Elon Musk. You know, and then he's the biggest, in that sense, the biggest of the techno feudalists. What do they call them? The cloudalists. That is the name for them. It's a very clunky, very heavy term. You know, it's not as good as capitalist, cloudalist. You know, but then because he's trying to name something that's still emerging. But we can see the future. We can already see the future. Elon Musk today's richest man, and then his attitude, his attributes, right? Trump too is involved in that, because Trump has moved into cryptocurrency and wants to turn the American economy in that direction. You know, so the signs are out there, but it's difficult for people to see those signs, and then when they see those signs, because it has become some kind of hegemony. You know, so we all aspire to. People want to sell their stuff online. You know. So most people won't say anything, the same way most people didn't say anything wrong with capitalism, most people won't say anything wrong with techno-feudalism, with the emerging order. In fact, for them, it's the future, and if we don't hold on to his coattails to land there, well, you have yourself to blame for being in the margins, you know. So I think it's going to be a very hard sell. It's going to be a very hard sell for Gen Z people, you know, whose lives are, because they're actually digital natives. And then see, the world into which you are born, right, it's your natural element. Right? So, for instance, it's like asking fish to think of some other kind of environment beyond beyond water. Yes, you know, they're going to be very, very hard sell. You know, and then he himself could not explain what can be done to overcome. He couldn't explain it, and then he tried to at the end of the book, and then he made some kind of excuse for himself by saying that Karl Marx, you know, was able to explain capitalism very, very well, but couldn't actually explain socialism. And Marx didn't. Marx never tried to explain socialism. So nobody knows what's going to take, you know, what's going to come after this, because we live within it. And then we live within what one can call the darkly unknowable, a term by Raymond Williams, right? That we live within that what one can call the darkly unknowable, in the sense that we are not aware that what takes place somewhere, you know, in America, right, affects what we do in Nigeria. Because it's actually a global world, right? It affects, but we're not aware. Right? And in fact, when I'm aware, I won't blame those people who, not being aware, are not online. Right? And I won't also blame those people who, being aware somewhat, are also online, because it's like asking fish not to live within that watery environment that becomes the element in which social life. But the other thing is this, that because we are humans and then we think that we have agency beyond the ordinary, because when Karl Marx painted the world that he painted, and it seemed that as though Europe was going to end up in disaster, Bismarck came and gave Europe the welfare state. And the welfare state seemed to avert what Marx predicted. Because each time there's that prediction of disaster happening, right? Somehow, and then when they see that it's going to happen, what happened? Because it's all human, the world that we live in is actually human creation in that sense, right? So what happens is that they tweak it a bit, and they make labor, you know, feel kind of safe, and they make and they engineers such that labor itself aspires to become, you know, one of the people in laboring classes aspire to become members of the ruling classes. You know, so it's going to be very hard to ask everybody, for instance, to give up their social media handles, and not, you know, I mean, the book arrived, you know, safely. I started reading the book. I read up to chapter 6, I think, and then I traveled on Thursday, and I didn't take it. I took other books. I want to take that book, but you see, I had it on my phone even before I got the physical book. I had one of those books I was going to read. I had it on my phone. So on this phone, and my phone, you know, got damaged. So I transferred it from my phone to my wife's phone, right? So I have it on this is my wife's second phone, right? So you can see how the digital itself saved me, made me, you know. So when I got to Lagos on Thursday, I was able to read the book in digital form, you know. So if you argue against these things, and then I mean, I came here, my copy is not with me, but I'm reading the book on my phone. You know what they will tell me? Facebook and Google and co. That you see, that word that you think you're going to demolish actually saved you from disaster. You know, so it's very difficult to recommend the book as a Bible that will make us see things and make us change our ways, because we live as fish within water when it comes to what is the magic. Thank you.
Thank you, Benson, for that very important introduction to the discussion. A great insight you have given. Talking about that book, that also reminds me that, you know, in reading this book, there are other publications. For instance, the volume that's already also in the market by Professor Asemoglu and Samuel Johnson. That is the author of Why Nations Fail. You know, the new volume is Power and Progress, and that is taking a sweep review of 1,000 years of man's struggle over technology and power, you know. And also to temper the point I'm making about that we are just helpless. More than maybe more than 70 years ago, you know, another economist too, Joseph Schumpeter, you know, had come with this theory of creative destruction, you know. So there is nothing that must have come from Apple, from Facebook, from all these tech giants that will say that it could not be surpassed. You know, let's just look at the last 24 years. You know, in 2000, the only search engine that you talk about is Yahoo, and that is why in Nigeria, when Yahoo now became synonymous with the new technology, anything that you know that because Yahoo, talk of Yahoo boys, you know. So if you are talking of the new technology 25 years ago, the only thing we talk about was Yahoo. But who uses Yahoo now for search engine? You know, before Google came, and now with AI, with Meta, and the rest, even Google itself will become more, you know, almost irrelevant as a search engine. You know, so I'm just saying that we should also take that Schumpeterian view, you know, of creative destruction, which is inherent in capitalism itself, but to now get to the argument of Yanis, which is what we are actually discussing, I think perhaps we should let the audience maybe hear from him. So if you already have some passages that you want to read, we can, as a break, you know, do the reading before we take one or two other issues, you know, in the book. Do you have passages to read? Yeah. Okay. Okay, maybe the lady first. Benson, if you don't mind. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah. Okay.
So is that particular, the first section where you talk about cloud steps. So I don't know what capitalism is, but I think it speaks to the Nigerian reality, you know? Yeah. Because we're in the margins, but we're not just in the margins alone. We're also part of that system. And then our labor in that system is largely unpaid. And then we, in a sense, are glad to not be heard. Because when we first had certificate, right, I tested it by trying to see how well it understood the Nigerian realities, you know. I asked it several questions. I asked it this particular question, you know, and that will show you one of my habits. I asked it what what was the meaning of sapele water. Sapele water, you know. And then he told me that sapele water, he told me that sapele water is water from sapele. And I went back to the same query. What's sapele water? Asked it like 10 times. Then it's self-learning kind of, you know. And I got to a point, it asked me back, is there something you want me to say that I'm not saying? I said, you don't know what sapele water is. And then I told my students, you know, to keep asking that question. After 3 months, we went back there. When we asked what sapele water, he gave us the answer straight. Gogoro. Said it was Gogoro. And they gave us links and gave us, went back, you know, back in time, gave us historical story, anecdotes, you know, and so on, you know. And then what they gave us back at the end, right, was more than what I even knew, right? And then we felt very happy, but I felt somewhat defeated, you know, because I knew that machine has, that algorithm has never drunk sapele water. You know, I felt so much, and then I felt that I was giving it something that it doesn't know, but that others who don't know that it doesn't know, because you don't know it by just having a name, and then being able to harvest what is out there. You know, you also know it by even smelling it before drinking it, you know. And then we want to see ourselves there, you know. When we go online and we want to play with our pictures, you know, and ask you to play your pictures, maybe to turn your pictures into a cartoon. It does it, and then it gives you back. It gets the face right, kind of, but always needs out on the nose shape and on the texture of the hair. You know, we feel sad, and then, you know, come on and go now. They're trying to like gather African faces and African noses and African hair, and then create content that will speak to us. You know, and when we see content that speaks to us, we feel happy. But you see, we empower them because they get richer. You know, but then we want to create content. You know, and by creating content, we think that we've in a sense taken Nigeria, you know, online. You know, and then that's his point. That at that moment when you are feeling good with yourself, when you think you have become part of that system, is the moment where you have actually become a self in that system. So I want to read from the passage we talk about cloud selves. I'm sorry, I don't have a very good reading voice, but so it says, consider what cloud capital consists of: smart software, server farms, cell towers, thousands of miles of optic fiber, and yet all of this would be worthless without content. The most valuable part of the stock of cloud capital is not its physical components, but rather the stories posted on Facebook, the videos uploaded to TikTok and YouTube, the photos on Instagram, the jokes and insults on Twitter, the reviews on Amazon, or simply our movement through space, allowing our phones to alert Google Maps to the latest spot of traffic. In providing these stories, videos, photos, jokes, and movements, it is we who produce and reproduce outside any market the stock of cloud capital. So we're in the margins, you know, but then what we do, we labor for it, you know, and it gains from our labor. And then when we go there, we don't say, if for instance, I come we are going to Mushi from Lekki, and then Google Maps fails you, right? You feel sad about it, and then you say, you see, we are not there, we are marginalized. And then you then try to, and then when you do it 2-3 times and the rest, right? He gets it right. But then he follows you around, you know, that route, you know, and it becomes part of the things that he then, you know. And then when that happens, Google gains, you know. Of course, we gain too by seeing that route from Lekki to Munshi on Google Maps. We gain too, you know. But then the truth of the matter is that we have not added to our own stock when it comes to how the system operates. But we figured out amongst ourselves, you know, because we think we are there too. You know, so it's a word that is, it says, very, very slippery, very, very hard to define, very hard to. I mean, I know Yannis will be glad I have his book on my phone. And that's part of the things that, you know, because on my phone, and that means a lot. Because for instance, when I know that when I go back on Anas Archive, you know Anas Archive, where you have books, where you can see books online. Yeah. So when I go back there, Anas Archive will tell me to read these other books, because somebody knows my reading habits. You understand? So that way is saying that we are losing our. But then you see, the thing is, perhaps what we need to do is to be more intentional in how we use these things. Because I don't mind being told to read this other book because I've read it. I don't mind that, you know. And then I don't think that I'm going to lose my mind to the algorithm. I don't think that there's going to come a time when the algorithm itself will then tell me to read a book that I don't have any interest in. From having, in a sense, been able to, you know, decode and, in a sense, codify my previous reading habits. So I think it's actually a matter of, I want to see Twitter go from the Nigerian space, you know, because we know that when we put the government, when we put some heat behind their bottom, you know, what they do first is to ban Twitter. You know, I don't want Twitter banned in Nigeria, but I know that Twitter can be used to mobilize and rest and to fight the elite, you know. So.
Thank you so much. So, can we have your own reading?
Thank you. It's something that you said, Mr. Benson, and it's just to emphasize the role of the state, even in capitalism and as well, even in techno-feudalism. One argument that they give of the survival of capitalism through all these years is because the state has always been inherent in capitalism survival, which Marx never knew. That was for him when he was writing Communist Manifesto and the dwindling of profit. He never knew that even you could use the, Yanis does talk about 2008 as the end of, like the start of the end of capitalism, but that's really when, in our lifetime, the state bailed out capitalism. But that has always been happening throughout. So even the New Deal of, you know, ushering in the welfare state is also a bailout of the state. So he does devote he does devote a period of the book to the geopolitics of the new Cold War and why China and the US, they are not fighting even for raw materials. Well, they are, which is the new oil of from Africa and elsewhere, but they're also fighting about cloud platforms. So, and he does make an argument that China is a bit ahead of the US, and that is why US is putting in all these policies. So you have even from the Biden administration and the Trump administration, for instance, controlling what TikTok is going to do, or controlling like the sale of material. So this is just an example from the passage about an example of where he says that China really has taken it to the next level of what he calls cloud finance. Yeah. So just to give an example of where even America wants to go to. So he says, the key here is the seamless integration of communication, entertainment, e-commerce, foreign investment, and much else with online services, the portal to cloud rent. As I write this sentence, WeChat, if you're familiar with China, they use it a lot. It's like their version of WhatsApp. The mobile messaging app belonging to Tencent, which is their cloud platform, has transmitted 38 billion messages in a single day. Its users did not have to exit the WeChat app to make a payment. While streaming music, scrolling social media, messaging their families, they're able to use the app to send money to anyone in China, as well as any of the millions outside China who have downloaded WeChat and opened a yuan account with any number of Chinese banks. With this great leap into financial services, China's cloudists acquired a 360 view of their users' social and financial life. If cloud capital is a produced means of behavioral modification, Chinese cloudists have accumulated cloud capital beyond the wildest dreams of their Silicon Valley competitors, who, by comparison, enjoy far less power per capita to accumulate cloud rent. American big tech has been doing what it can to catch up, but it is becoming worryingly apparent to American rulers that China's cloudists have already acquired a power that US cloudists are struggling to emulate, the power stemming from a successful merger of cloud capital and cloud finance, which is cloud finance. So it also brings into, he does have I would say, a very rosy-eyed view of even the internet's origins. but so he thinks, he looks at it as even so democratized, but it really was a state-funded enterprise. And you also have to think about this coalition between the techno-feudalists and the state, and why is also even, he doesn't look into it, but could it also be part of surveillance? So you also have to think about it in terms of that idea of the surveillance and more power to the state to control its citizens.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You also see that part of his thesis about the possible end of capitalism is that the tech giants have become so powerful that even the state is becoming helpless, you know, in the face of the power they exercise, you know. Perhaps the most dramatic part of it is Elon Musk, you know, taking on the bully in America, you know, and temporarily sharing power. You know, Elon Musk never won any election, but for a few weeks, he was exercising presidential power in America with Trump before, you know, the quarrel came, you know. Now, the semi-helplessness of the state, whether in EU or in the US or elsewhere, you know, in trying to tame the excesses of the tech giants, you know, will seem not to justify the position of the position of Benson, you know. And I think that is the point that we should note in what, you know, Yanni is saying. Adaudo, yes, we're trying to recall that passage in the Communist Manifesto when Marx and Engels were saying that after the transitory stage of socialism, ultimately at the stage of communism, that the state will wither away. That is, the state will wither away, and what you have will not be administration of persons, but just administration of things. That it is because of the contradiction of capitalism that you need to have a heavy state, you need to have a strong army, a strong police, and the rest. But if the dream of communism is achieved, you will not even need the state. But the reverse is now what is happening, and that what as a reason, as a result of capitalist development, is not trying to undermine capitalism itself and to be, you know, the cause of its forecast. But then let us go into maybe another aspect in the book which is more interesting. Although before then, just to add to what Benson was saying, there's a whole chapter which is entitled "The World," where Yanis, you know, tries to wrestle with how he came with his own coinage of techno-feudalism. He admits in the book that there are other synonyms of techno-feudalism. Some people call it platform capitalism. Some call it hyper-capitalism, you know, and the rest. But he, you know, in an attempt to shock, that's why I say that the book, my own reading of it is, you have political economy dramatized. You know, you can see with his poetic overtones, use of imageries and the rest, trying to make, you know, a discussion, a very serious discussion of political economy more interesting. So I think he's come with this coinage, you know, to shock, you know, his audience, you know, more or less. So let's go to this is projection about the new Cold War, because we thought that with the fall of Berlin Wall in 1989, that the Cold War ended. Fukuyama came with his exuberance of thinking that that is the end of history, and that the highest mankind can aspire to is liberal democracy. But of course, since then, he has had cause to revise himself that it is not, it's tempered. If anything at all now, what we have is that liberalism is on retreat, you know, globally, you know, with the emergence of Trump, with the emergence of populists in Europe, you know, and the rest, that this is not the best time for liberalism in the world. So, but now Yanis is projecting a new Cold War, but that this new Cold War is going to be between America and China. Let us explore that a bit before we move into other things, starting with Adaudo. Yeah.
I did touch on it a bit in my previous answer, but it's really about, as I mentioned, cloud finance. So who is really going to control? It's really a question of the control of geopolitics. So if you're having, and also the control of who gets to take the cloud rent geopolitically. So at present, what we have is a very dollarized global economy. So let me just say, this is the backdrop of things in terms of cloud finance. So what we have is a very globalized dollar economy, and how this came about was post-World War II. Basically, before World War II, Britain was the empire, Europe was the empire. But post-World War II, the argument is the US helped defeat Hitler, and believe it or not, it was Russia and China that were also there. There are three of them, even if they're no longer seen eye to eye. So there's that picture of all their presidents. But it was America that then decided that, okay, this is how the new world order should be. So when I started with saying you can remake and make the world however you want to, the world we are living in now was made post-World War II, where you have the IMF, the World Bank, even the architecture of the global financial system that was hinged on first on dollar being backed with gold, but with people with sort of by the age of Nixon, I always say he literally created the modern world as you know it, neoliberalism. So removing the dollar from its backing of gold and allowing the dollar to be, in a way, the world currency. So what he's talking about in cloud finance is the China is, through these digital methods, is even trying to bypass the global financial system of the dollar, even creating their own yuan digital currency, so that he uses this example of the central bank of China you can have a digital wallet there and just transact. So if I want to, if I'm even buying something in China, I don't need to send, the Naira doesn't have to go to Nigeria Central Bank, it then converts to dollar. I could just pay it into, I can just ask for a transfer from my yuan digital currency to the person in China. So it's really bypassing the global financial problem, because for each step in this global financial system, they're collecting money. So it's really a question of money.
Yeah, Benson, from your earlier response, it seems yes, one of the very few people I think in the world still believes that globalization is still in existence. Not with Trump using tariff openly, to destroy, world trade. But you appear to still be very optimistic about the thing called globalization. Now, with that faith, what is your own projection of the possibility on the possibility of a new Cold War emerging between America and China?
Well, I think
from the way Yanis tells his story here.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to be difficult for the nation state to wither away under any kind of system, and then that what we call of course we know that what is referred to as cloud capital, it's not anywhere in the clouds. It's terrestrial. It's servers, and fiber optics, infrastructure is terrestrial. So that word itself, cloud capital, is metaphoric. And the metaphors are used in this context, right, to shift our attention away from how things really are, how things really are in the world. I think a case from our own experience, and then how metaphors can become very dangerous. That during the slave trade, the people at the coast were in touch with white people, and they knew what was going on. And then they kept what was going on secret from people in the hinterland, because that was how they were able to, make a profit, And then one of my teachers said that when they asked the people in Ijebu what they were doing, said they were turning human beings into money, And then the people in the hinterland then thought, and among the Ijebu they kept the secret among themselves, That the people in the hinterland then thought that what the Ijebu were doing was to use some kind of magic, some kind of occult power to turn human beings into money, into ATM, And then today we know that belief is strongly held in our society, that human beings can be turned into ATMs. In fact, there's hardly any Nigerian who disbelieves that. Money rituals, That Nigerians believe that can turn human beings into ATMs, So same for cloud. So we think that there's no cloud. The capital is not in the cloud. It's terrestrial. It's based on this earth. It's infrastructures for running the system, and China has it. China has it. The US has it too, and the US had it first. Because what we call the internet today, the basic infrastructure initially was built by the US, by the Pentagon, and they made free. And it was made free because the US wanted, and not made free since that everybody was given access equally, but made free amongst allies in the US and amongst allies in NATO, because of the fear of some kind of Russian attack on their system. That when it happens, because of the things that are decentralized when it comes to sharing information, that if they eat this particular server, these other servers can survive the strike. And it became it was free amongst allies, Of course, the Soviet Union had its own cybernetics and infrastructure that they didn't make free. Otherwise, it had gone that way too, right? But in any case, China learned from the US, developed its own infrastructure. Today has control of certain elements, natural elements, rare earths, that are used for building the machines and the rest, So there's that control of the terrestrial, and then territories are what makes up nation states. So there's no way, the way the world is conceived now, that the emerging system would lead to an erosion of the nation state. And Trump has seen that he has seen that, and he actually wants that war, that the battle over control of the cloud to happen now. And he's using the tariffs, right, to marshal allies behind the US so they can confront the Chinese system that's also becoming very, very global. And then see if China can be cowed, right? Of course, what China has is terrestrial. It's there, they have the rare earths. So we want China to be cowed, so that China also becomes a supplier of, but China has learned too, that since we have this, we have the technology, we have the expertise, can create a system that rivals us, and then we will see what China has done. That from some very small investment, right, they produce DeepSeek, and DeepSeek is very, very good. I use DeepSeek. But see, when you have DeepSeek, and then see, you go to, DeepSeek, for instance, I would say defeated me, and a friend of mine. Because we had this argument with somebody who does software engineering and does AI stuff. And he said DeepSeek will write poetry. I would say, no, it can't. I went on, but that guy fed DeepSeek some lines from Okigbo. And what we got back from DeepSeek was fantastic. Very close to Okigbo's poetry, very, very close to it. And then that with more, prompts. Of course, the prompts are going to be us feeding it with data from humanity, because AI itself is HI, is human intelligence. So the more we feed the data from source, it will learn and then ape and then perhaps create something that will become indistinguishable from the original. So this is very, very good. But when we then ask DeepSeek on questions that are in a sense very, very probing about the Chinese system, ask DeepSeek for the possibility of a change in Chinese system of government, and then you see DeepSeek will tell you that it's not able to think. It stops thinking, but it can do the poetry of Okigbo, of Shoinka, but it cannot think about a change when it comes to the Chinese government. So then see that the nation state is actually really, really behind these systems. It's not anything in the cloud. It's terrestrial, and it's because it's terrestrial. And then you see that we don't have a global system where we all live in one global society, one global village. It doesn't exist. It's nation states versus nation states. So I don't see how the state is going to wither away from any rise of a new class led by Elon Musk. Because when it got to brass tacks and Trump showed his power, Musk had to withdraw from the competition. So the state is still as strong. And then from this analysis, the analysis that we have from Yanis, after 2008, what the banks did was to support capitalism even more. And then the central banks are state organs. So the state is still firm, the state is there. It's only a place like our own society, where they think that it's just Gen Z people going about the laptops that will create the digital economy. The state is actually it's work for the state to do. It's work for the state. So I don't see the state doing away. And then that code will happen. It must happen. Because the cloud, there's no cloud anywhere. It's not terrestrial. And terrestrial is then territory amongst nation states.
Okay, thank you. Okay, before we move even to the cloud, let us deal with the material reality that Yanis is talking about. That it's not just only the cloud that is being conquered. Elon Musk is already saying that it's getting some territory in the Mars. Before we even go to the space, let's go to the material. And that is that now the theater of new exploitation is no more in the factory floor. Because the thing about capitalism is that the worker is earning wage, but from that wage is being exploited, But that the new exploitation is the exploitation of the mind. And if you will, it's not only Yanis that is studying this story. I've cited the example of the Nobel laureate in economics, as Moglu, and his co-author, Samuel Johnson, That is the author of Why Nations Fail. In this, their new book on power and progress, they actually gave a coinage to it, which you say is attention economy. That the new economy is the attention. That is the new commodity that we are dealing with now. It's not Rolls Royce. It's not French wine. It's not Italian shoe. But that attention, the mind, of the people, that's conquered by the cloudalist, who he says are going to replace the capitalist. Now, from his narration, how realistic do you think is his projection? Let's start with Adaudo.
I often think that when we talk about the control of the mind or the control or the state controlling the mind, for me, it's nothing new in history. It's always been there, and we call it propaganda. He does refer it to here.
No, sorry, no. In this sense, no, it's not the state now.
The
Facebook is a Meta, Facebook,
okay.
Google, the tech giants who today they are the richest. That they make their billions, their trillions of naira by arresting the mind of those people who are already lost on the internet, in the cyberspace, That the new exploitation is the exploitation of the mind. It's not about the state.
He does.
It's the exploitation by the tech giant.
Yes. I think you mentioned it in your first answer about no one wants to do away with their Twitter account or their Facebook account or any digital. Even he admits, I can't even do away with it. So, and he does give a history of that it even started with television when people were, the age of marketing and advertisers. So now it's even replaced by algorithms that are basically, as you are feeding it, you use the perfect example, as you are feeding it information, is understanding you, and it's giving you, and it's controlling you. At some point, you might even decide, okay, maybe that is the better route, but the cloud is telling you, no, go this way. So you then go that way. So it's the idea that we have automated behavioral modification. And this constant behavioral modification, even with AI and etc., is going to continue, and is going to be giving this cloud capitalist more money, or the cloud is more money for perpetuity as we know it. So that's his argument. Is it a reality? Yes, because we are living in, you cannot argue against that. We are living in a situation where our lives are very digitized, but at the same time, I keep even wondering in the African context, we do have a lot of mobile penetration, etc., but compared even, as you've said, compared to the proportion of our population, are we even in that cloud fiefdom that he talks about, for us to even be part of that behavioral modification at a large scale? But for let's use the United States, Europe, people do see elements of it, especially in terms of, people are arguing that because of that algorithm and it feeding you what you want, it then creates bubbles of people. So especially in the United States, people talk about how it is very divided along political lines, who don't see eye to eye. So and then that also feeds into his solution. So his solution is that what is fed to people is controlled by a public media. So that's his solution to that bubble that the behavioral modification of algorithms has created. So it's a reality for them in terms of algorithms are creating bubbles of, let me use even the word tribes, that people do not even see eye to eye, and therefore that is a form of behavioral modification, especially him as a Marxist, as a finance minister, as an economist, or a leftist, wants to break.
Thank you so much. So Benson, what is your take on the future or the trajectory of the attention economy?
Well, I think that to a large extent, we cannot deny the fact that there's plenty of attention grabbing when it comes to our lives online. You know, that, I mean, most of us, when we go to bed at night, the last thing we look at is our phone. And first thing we look at in the morning is our phone. So the phone takes plenty of our attention, you know. That cannot be denied. And then it has become more than some means of communication. It's a means of existence for us. You know, that's what it has become, you know. And of course, the phone is not just the phone itself. What makes the phone a smartphone is the apps that power it. And with these apps, we do all sorts of things, you know. And the things that we do with these apps are things that we want to claim, give our lives some kind of enhancement, you know. And then people comment a lot about how the phone seems to not know them. You know, that my phone, how did my phone know that I want to do this thing? But it's not because you fed it data by yourself. That's why it knows, you know. So it's not as if it's just intelligent by itself. It's not. You know, when I teach new media in UI, I talk about how the Babalawo, for instance, Babalawo would understand the phone better than those who do not believe, who not do these things, you know. So when we conjure up a face on your screen, for instance, that is what the Babalawo always wanted to do, to conjure up a face from the surface of the water. So when that happens, and then see, when it comes to that kind of analogy, right, the difference between technology and superstition is very, very slight. It's very, very slim. Just one step, the line dividing them, you know. So that thing about it taking our attention cannot be denied. It has become how we live our lives, right? And then for me, it's how intentional we are. That is key, you know. So I don't think that Yanis would claim, because Yanis, I mean, I was interestingly, he has the gadgets in his house, in his room. He lives with the gadgets. He has them. He has them. Google, Alexa. He has them. The other one by Apple. He has both in his, and then somebody got those two devices, those two apps talking to each other about his situation. So he's not somebody who has become a Luddite because of how he thinks that the world is heading in that direction, right? So he uses all these things too. And I don't think that Yanis will claim that his mind has been grabbed by technology. He won't make that claim for himself. And then it becomes how rapid now the hubris of the theorists to say that where they seem to be the ones who are, in a sense, saved, who are immune to this. I think people generally, right? What they get from the internet is what they give to it. It actually reflects us. If society is divided, it brings us the division. In fact, maybe even faster. If it is, and then well, if there is a matter now, if there is seeding rebellion in society, right? It brings that even faster. So for me, it in a sense it reflects who we are, it reflects our society, right? I mean, somebody who is very savvy when it comes to pursuing digital footprints, right? If you let them have access, for instance, if you give me access to your Facebook, I will know the things you have been doing all this while. Just from looking at the reels to feed you. Because the reels that you consume on Facebook are the reels that's the kind of reels that you send back to you. So you cannot blame it when it sends those things back to you. And it even sends worse things. Because it might try from a reel that is, because I mean, if you look at Nigerian kids, they are very, very violent. But Nigerians laugh over aggression. We find pleasure in aggression. So you find our kids come with them, then they have this sound that comes when somebody slaps. When somebody falls and the rest, So if you start with reels that involve just slaps, very soon you move into reels that involve blows. And therefore you don't move reels that involve shooting and the rest. So it gives us more of the things that we feed it. So I really cannot blame. I find it difficult to give agency as such to algorithms, to apps. It's HI that informs AI. And if there's division, because there's division, and if division is, it becomes very, very sharply, very, very sharply demonstrated. It's because it has always been there. We've always been looking for the means. And I see online, right, those who want to do bad things online, they do it faster. It gives us that chance, the anonymity. So if all this fire, you want to tell your professor, you're a bastard, just look for him on the forum online. Join that forum, create an avatar for yourself. And and then that happened with Mary Bird, one professor in Cambridge. This guy kept insulting her. And in fact, threatening her and all of that, it got to a point. Somebody was able to do some matching. Said, I know you. It's you from this place. I will report to your mother. I mean, England. And then finally, so when that woman raised that alarm, I said, I know you, real person behind this avatar. The guy retreated, and then Mary Bird said, well, in any case, so they went, and somehow the guy was, in the sense, he was saved by losing his online personnel, right? He was saved. But you see, the truth of the matter is that he did what he did because that has always been within him to do. So I won't blame apps. I won't blame platforms. I think that it's human beings, right? So what the things that are inside us are potentially more sharper. And then perhaps, I don't know whether it's not what we need. That perhaps we need this society to, we need things to really go down totally. That maybe when it goes down completely, then maybe rebuild. If we ever would, maybe rebuild.
Okay. Thank you for that insight. I think, let me come in defense of Yanis. Contrary to what you might distinguish the panelists are saying, Yanis is not short on solutions because the pressure is given that it's just dreaming about the killing of capitalism without solution. If you look at the chapter on escape from techno-feudalism, it's so rich in terms of solutions, and that will lead me to my second reading. But just as a preface to it, Yanis as a Marxist is so enamored with what we communists call the most successful political pamphlet ever published in history, and that is the Communist Manifesto, which was written by Marx and Engels in 1848, not as an academic work, but as a program for a party, to execute in bringing about socialist revolution. In a recent essay in the London Guardian, Yanis, perhaps in a self-deprecating manner, says that everything that he's writing, as far as he's concerned, is trying to plagiarize the Communist Manifesto. So much that if you want to understand what it is, just read the Communist Manifesto that he is just plagiarizing it. Now, there's a passage here that I think he actually attempts to do that. That is paraphrasing the Communist Manifesto. Because if you are familiar with those poetic passages on the Communist Manifesto, you will relate to some of the things he said there. For instance, the last sentence in the Communist Manifesto famously is, "Workers of all countries unite, because you have nothing to lose but your chains." Now let's see how Yanis has paraphrased it here. So I'll just take a very short paragraph, so as not to bore us. Yeah, I know. I'm rising in defense of Yanis, as my panelists are trying to pummel him. Now, let me just take a very short paragraph. It says, Marx famously described our condition under capitalism as that of alienation, quote. The word alienation is one that is so recurrent in Marxist philosophy. And that this is owing to our having no ownership of the products of our labor, to our having no say in how things get done. Under Techno Feudalism, which he says is going to replace capitalism after it must have been killed, we no longer own our minds. Every proletarian is turning into a cloud prole. That's apart from being, we know the traditional proletarian under capitalism, but now you are now having proletarian, yeah. Every proletarian is turning into a cloud prole during working hours and into a cloud self during the time for rest. Every self-employed striver mutates into a cloud bazaar, while every self-employed struggler becomes a cloud self. While privatization and private equity asset strip all physical wealth around us, cloud capital goes about the business of asset stripping our brains. Yes. To own our minds individually, we must own cloud capital collectively. It is the only way we can turn our cloud-based artifacts from a produced means of behavior to a produced means of human collaboration and emancipation. And he ends by by writing, cloud selves, cloud proles, and cloud bazaars of this world unite. We have nothing to lose but our mind chains. So his argument is that capitalism puts the worker, have chains, but what the new system that is coming, which is going to be a major shift in human civilization, is that it is the mind that is in chains now. And that and while this mind is in chains, people are making profits, from it, For instance, the physical capitalists, those who in the business of automobiles, those who are in the business of power generation, you actually see what the commodities that they are selling, they're having it. But in this case, it is the human mind that the techno feudalists, are feeding upon. So, what do you have to say to this, Adaudo? And before I come to Benson.
I think it's a question of, maybe as Mr. Benson alluded to, even with AI, is, I suppose, garbage in, garbage out, in that sense. So your algorithm is feeding you what you want, exactly what you want. And I referred to it in my previous answer, that is really human nature. You go to what you gravitate to, and then you create you do not expand your mind to other things, and you do not want to, even deliberately. So there isn't that even expansion of the mind to learn more about other points of view, other geographies, etc. And in terms of how he even ends it, about cloud poles, which are the workers, cloud serfs, you and I giving free data for no money, and and the vassal capitalists, people selling in the fiefdoms. I think he does assume, he wants to, but even we know that centralized communism with the Soviet Union really didn't work. It became a kind of a worse alternative to what even, quote unquote, the liberal democracies talked about. I do always argue that there was no liberal democracy. For instance, Black America was still under slavery and racial segregation till the rest of Africa. So they can't even talk about liberal democracy, but that's an aside. But you still constantly had the alternative of the free market and the free market was giving innovation. So one of the things he's assuming a very homogeneous society. And that's also maybe the dividing line, is that you're not living in a homogeneous society. You're living in a very diverse society within America, within Europe, globally. And you want them to have even a particular viewpoint of certain things. So for me, sadly, the algorithms will continue like that, and there would be divisions, because even with how history has gone, people do not see class first. They see other ways of identity before class, even if I do agree that class does underpin a lot of things, because it's fundamentally about
the attitude of Karl Marx. He has that attitude, because he goes beyond just analysis. He's both an analyst and a catalyst, because he wants to catalyze some kind of reaction, some kind of rebellion. Because Marx didn't just say that his theories are scientific and then let's leave things the way they are, Because Marx argued that the things are used by ideas to change the world, If that was one of the arguments against Marx, that if the theory was scientific, right, you don't need to do anything about it. Like, that change will come, because it will come inevitably, because it's just part of the historical process of society, But then Marx was an activist also, so he didn't just analyze, he also catalyze things. And Yanis too wants to catalyze things, wants also to unite and rebel against, and then we are rebelling. Yes, we are rebelling because we are not just online and living the world, according to what Zuckerberg or Marx wants, I mean, you go on Twitter, for instance, and you find out on the same thread where Marx is posting nonsense, people, push back. So I don't think that. So I don't have any text that I will put forward as a text observation, right? But then what we say was our actions. What we get is what we give, and what we give is what we get back. And then it's just obvious that if your feed is full of, if your news feed online is filled with nonsense, because you give it nonsense, and it's good to have this kind of tool. Because, I mean, I can leave here now, and the next thing I go on Twitter, and I'm converting Marx straight, So yeah, and then he's right, because I know that when I put up that kind of stuff on Twitter, that I give content to Twitter, and it becomes a richer place. But as it gets richer, right, I also feel better with myself, because you see, labor has, as I said earlier in the work itself, that labor has two aspects to it, right? And what his mother describes as experiential labor, that labor that you do that makes you feel happy with yourself. That when I'm working, I know that my boss is making a lot of money, right? but I've done some work that is going to save somebody's life in this hospital, and that gives me pleasure, you know. So I'm going to go on Twitter that is owned by Elon Musk and tell him to his face that you are this and you are that, you know, and then that gives me pleasure too, you know. So I don't think that my mind is going to be lost online. And if minds get lost online, well, it gets lost, they get lost online because, yeah, these things happen too, you know. And then I can see, I mean, with what happened recently in the US, the election of Mamdani, you know, it's as if they are all conquering. They are not all conquering. I don't think so, you know. And I don't think I'll lose my own mind anyways.
Yeah. Except that you don't add that he won on an explicitly socialist platform in New York, for that matter, which is the headquarters of world capitalism. Yeah, and that is very significant. But before we round up, maybe we can take one or two interventions from the audience. Yeah.
No, I was looking forward to, I mean, because I read your review. I mean, Ben, you didn't send me any review. So I was looking forward to you vigorously contesting him, but you kind of were kind to, I mean, his communist narrative of things, you know. There's something that you say here that the solution, I mean, that's the solution of the author. Freedom from fiefdoms is for the individual to submit to the collective. To own our minds individually, we must own cloud capital collectively. That's what the author says. And you say that it's now on stage, you say that the world is diverse, and that's why this collective can work. But we have reached this point despite that diversity. I mean, the human mind can do anything. I mean, the fact that we're at this point, I mean, where we all sort of like submit, you know, to the Twitter, the Facebook, the whatever, it has happened regardless of our diversity. So if it takes algorithm to get us here, it might also take algorithm to take us out. What do you think? That's number one. The second thing is that when we were trying to pick this book, which Mr. Komolafe himself suggested, actually he suggested the other one, The Power, and we were trying to decide which of them is really the key to that we can use as key, I mean, in the sub-theme, keys to the global economy. But one of the first things you said in your review was this book is not about any key to any global economy. I mean, there must be a reason why you say that. Can you explain? Thank you very much.
Okay, quickly, maybe can we take, if we still have one or two other, so that the panelists will just round everything up. Any other intervention? Questions? Okay, sir. Yeah.
I want to lay emphasis on what you said. Okay. That, which was a bit, corrected. But I want to say that what you said has been the fact from the beginning. That the mind is the origin of everything, even from the beginning. Anybody that controls the mind, or any force that controls the mind, controls everything. It's only that it has just been technologized. For example, you have that at the Garden of Eden. God said, don't eat from this. If you eat from it, you are going to die. They were afraid. They didn't eat from it. Another master maneuverer, I'm not equating him to God. Lucifer said, come. He didn't go to the man first because he knew that the mind of the man was stronger. He said, come. If you eat this thing, you'll be as wise as Baba that said you should not eat it. So when Eve took it, she saw enlightenment and she gave it to her husband. The feudalist gathers an army. He makes it look as if it's unconquerable. And he tells the army to be intimidating the people. And say, if you don't do what I say, you will die. You better support me and give me everything I want. And then the people go along. The capitalist comes He builds factories, he builds everything. He says, this is how you can make your living. Come to me, let me give you a bit of money, and then you continue to enslave yourself for me. So it has always been a thing of the mind, as he said. When Trump came, he knew that most whites in America, that they were getting afraid of the situation where blacks and other colors start controlling America. Trump cannot be said to be a model of a person that people will vote for, but he worked on the weakness of the mind of the people. These people are coming to take over your land. You better, nobody in his right sense will really vote for Trump. But he has told them, he has controlled the mind, and that's what he did the second time. So the mind, controlling the mind, or the mindset, has always been.
Thank you, sir. Any other intervention? Otherwise, the panelists will. Okay, sir. Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm captivated by that statement. To own cloud capital collectively, not single-handedly. Now, talking about collectively, I have gone through life experience, metamorphosing from what we met our forefathers practice, and I'm carried by that theme, change. Not just change, there's a positive change and there's a negative change. Now, talking about change, I'm looking at the challenges that the creative industry is faced with, whereby we can creatively and collectively change the narratives of what is happening in the country by fostering peaceful coexistence. How do I mean? We can initiate a challenge or a debate creatively, whereby some of the things that have divided us in the country can be taken care of. When I mean divided us, religion is number one. Now, because we have multifaceted kind of religious practice, in the creative industry, we are researchers. We ask questions. As journalists, we ask questions. And then to conclude with what I want to contribute with the platform for today, when we initiate a debate from interfaith to tell us what it is that makes them to want to do this and what it is that want them to want to live that faith, by the time we bring 3 or more of these people from different faiths and then allow them to tell the audience what it is that they found wrong or right in these, we are the moderators. We don't need to be part of it. But if you allow one part of the faith to undo it, it will look as if they are antagonizing other faith. But in the creative industry, we can have it, okay, let's have you people tell us what it is you want people to know about. So these are parts of my observation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are really running out of time, but I guess, I think you should just respond on behalf of everybody here.
Yes, thank you. So, I was looking at, to respond to your question, I was looking at it from taking the book on its own in relation to the theme. So if we are reading Techno Feudalism, What Killed Capitalism, as a blueprint for what is the key to the knowledge economy, Yanis doesn't give that, or I disagree with what he has proposed. So when we talk about, let's say, knowledge economy, so the idea is information and innovation, creating opportunities for work, for thriving, for living, that the individual is able to freely express themselves and in the society and through work. What Yanis is arguing in the book is that our minds are so controlled that the information that we are even producing is not serving us, is creating behavioral modifications that are just feeding into the very, very select few of cloudist. So, and the solution he gives, I've referred to it, is, let's be subject to the collective. So maybe I could quickly read that passage, if you don't mind.
Be fast.
Yes, I will be fast. When he goes imagining another now, so he goes about taking companies and, let us see. Okay, he goes something like, your news, okay, this is towards the end. The cloud and the land are the commons, that's the collective. Yeah. So your news feed and its accompanying sections are compiled by an algorithm calibrated and maintained by local public media, which is in turn owned by a municipality, but controlled by local people selected through a combination of lotteries and elections. That is, I don't know how that will work. The diversity of human experience, the diversity of the collective. That's why I said he's really imagining a very homogeneous society, which perhaps the communists wanted to create in terms of the Soviet Union, which is subsuming the diversity under classism. So saying it's the proletariat that would be the defining identity. But when you talk about the collective, you shouldn't assume that everybody may think the same and give a particular news feed, etc. And I think in my summation as well, in that review, I talk about, okay, he doesn't give opportunity, he doesn't even talk about how innovation comes about. So when you're talking about the knowledge economy, he's thinking about how things are already there. So how do you even create, through the knowledge economy, create innovation, use the information to create things? I referred to startups, etc., in Africa that are springing up as an opportunity to even bring Africa into this global knowledge economy. So for me, it's really a critique of him to say he's very pessimistic about what we are now, which is the knowledge economy. He doesn't think we have knowledge. We are controlling our knowledge. And he doesn't give opportunities for us to use that knowledge in a very innovative way.
Thank you so much. I think at this stage, exceptionally enriching the discussion, and throw light to it, and to also, in the spirit of their positions, that we should also be liberal enough to read the book. Because one thing that Yanis has proved, and and that we should be part of the debate. So in the spirit of that, I would strongly recommend that even in disagreement, we should read the book and to know, so as to be aware of other perspectives that are also dominating discussions. Thank you so much for the enriching discussion. And thank you so much, the very patient audience, for tolerating us for this long. Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right, please, a round of applause for this wonderful session. All right, the next thing, quick one, is to take a picture. So I want to call on the Chief Kayode Komolafe, please join us with the picture. Thank you. Photographers, are we ready, please? All right. Photographers.
Well, thank you, everyone. I'm just hijacking the... Hello, please. More funding for the arts. I don't know who has seen the fund, but virtually everybody I've spoken to, complained that they never saw the fund. So we've been receiving audio fund from the federal government, from the Renewed Hope agenda. So that's what we want to discuss. It's not my job. But we want to quickly do something that we should have done after the next session and while you are still standing there. We have a young lady. The exhibition out there is by a girl of 11. She joined us when she was 3, and every year she had become a major photographer. Anukom, if you remember the young lady that showed up on Alibaba's, is it January 1? The January 1 concert, one of the biggest concerts, yeah. And she got, you didn't share the money with me, that's why I can't remember. But she got so much money, got camera, many people wanted her to be on the thing. She was 3 when she first joined us. She's 11 now, and she had to come from school. And she had to go back to boarding school this evening. So it's in a day, she had a present for last year she gave Cora, now she has a present for who? And the father is there. The father is one of our volunteers too, the photographer.
Almighty, and to thank my parents, and to also thank Daddy German, because the appreciation will not be complete if I didn't thank him. So I want to use this also beg children, to also beg our parents that we children, we have passions, and especially for the girl child, we have passions, we have talents, that we should please help us support our talent and our passion, and God will help us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, is the chairman 75? Are you sure? Our chairman dresses like a Hollywood actor. So I don't even believe that is. Thank you very much. Huh? Yes. And we paid him so much in those days because it was palm wine and peanut, according to Alibaba last night. Alibaba said we're only distributing peanuts and palm wine. Thank you very much. Olakule, please.